Melanie, you're live streaming?
No, Becky is because she's the host.
Okay.
Should I wait or?
We are live.
We are live. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to the public and trustees and staff. It is just after 8 p.m. and I call the May 18th, 2021 extraordinary meeting out of the ordinary emergency meeting of the Albany Public Library Trustees to order. Thank you everyone for watching. I'd like to quickly give the floor over to Rebecca Del Gaizo, who will explain how comments work and tell us if we have any.
If anyone from the public would like to send a public comment, they're asked to email to publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. All one word, publiccomment@albanypubliclibrary.org. We actually have received one public comment for this meeting. It's from a patron named Timothy Reedy. It says, I think right now masks should be required if you are not in a private room. Private room reserved can be unmasked. That way unmasked folks have a place to sit. And that is all.
Thank you for that comment. Wonderful. I'd like to announce that all trustees are present tonight. Thank you everyone for coming to a meeting that was just scheduled yesterday in light of the governor's guidance. And I think we'd all like to kind of talk out that very guidance. So should we pull up the items that were preloaded so the public can view them and we can all look at them one at a time?
So,
okay, and this is Scott,
Becky,
so I'll ask you to walk us through.
Well, I think before we do this, we should actually do the answers to the questions from the board members, and that'll inform the conversation going forward.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Before we get into the details, though, maybe we can give a frame about what we're actually deciding on tonight.
Okay. So the reason to call this meeting is that Governor Cuomo announced yesterday that as of Wednesday, which is tomorrow, New York State would follow the CDC guidelines for mask wearing, which don't necessarily concord with what we have in our pandemic operations plan. So we need to figure out how we're going to move forward under the newer guidance. Thank you for that. Anyone can chime in if I'm not wording it properly. So I should say to the public that we've had quite a bit of conversation in email going back and forth. And Scott's been working away at this and trying to sort everything out. So we do have these documents loaded up that some are from Scott, some are from our discussions, one is from our council and Mr. Schofield. So Scott, would you like to quickly just tell us what the first memorandum says in summary?
So sure, and I'll just do a really quick summary. I'm not gonna read it. Just the first memo that we've created, it says mask options, but that's not what this memo is. So we got to fix that later. So we started a conversation with the board. Matthew sent an email that I forwarded an email that I had sent to him about my concerns, and my opinion has not changed from that email. Like I said, I have my preferences and what I've advised the board to do. But there were some really great questions. One, we don't need to do policy revisions. The Board of Trustees passed an emergency act policy, which is on the website. And also I believe we may have provided, it's in the pandemic operation plan. So this policy overrides all policies while the trustees view that we're in a state of emergency. So there was a lot of great questions about policies. We've drafted and created a policy that gives you all the power to override certain things. The staff is, I wouldn't say very clear anymore. I would say the staff is clear that they want to continue with masks. There's a letter from the union supporting it, but there are members of the staff, more so than we expected, that when polled said they would be comfortable working without masks. So that's changed a little bit over the day. NILA and DLD guidance, Tom asked a really great question. There is none. NILA doesn't usually provide guidance like this. They haven't through the course of the pandemic. DLD guidance, the only DLD guidance we can find is the guidance that they're using for the state library. They did a press release last week that they asked experts. They got advice on how to open the state library. They opened the state library this week. Nothing has come across Nyline or anywhere else saying that they're changing the guidance, which includes individuals needing to wear masks while they're in the building. So any kind of DLD guidance can only be guessed by how they're handling their own public space, which is still requiring masks. So if you can scroll down, Becky, please. So I did poll libraries. I polled Upper Hudson libraries, about 15 responded. It was very much mixed, but the majority are keeping masks until their next board meeting. Of the big four, so there's really a big 5 libraries in the Upper Hudson system. 3 libraries responded. Their answers were 4 libraries responded. Some were unsure. East Greenbush is holding steady. For Colony, they can't make a decision about their continuation service plan because they're a municipal library, and I heard that a lot today. So until the town changes their guidance, they won't change their guidance. And then one library wants masks for staff, but not will do masks for staff, but not patrons. I also sent out an email to central library directors. We also had a meeting today at 1:30. And again, this was mixed. Again, the municipal libraries have to wait for their towns or cities or counties to make changes. Niagara Falls is going maskless. Some others are not. I will say that Queens and Brooklyn, I believe. No, Queens, I believe. I didn't get a confirmation, but Brooklyn is still requiring masks for the time being. Many of the central library directors, when we discussed it today, they're awaiting their board to make the decision. They definitely view this as a policy issue and needs to be decided by their boards. Someone asked, Sarah asked about City Hall. My conversation with them was that they were keeping a mask mandate. They were working on what it was going to look like for staff. Karen seems to have a little bit of information that conflicts with that, so I'll let her speak after this. A bunch of questions about vaccinations. Things are in the pandemic operation plan. I gave the pages to them. A great question about air filtration from Trustee Strong. We believe, again, we don't have any air filtration issues anywhere but Washington Avenue. That is still a concern, but it's not a major concern because it's in spaces with high ceilings. New York State Health Department, Albany County, Trustee Robinson did a really great job of sharing information with us about New York State. CEC website was down for a chunk of yesterday, which was interesting. And the county is mixed. The county is saying they're going to follow the CDC guidelines, but then Dr. Whalen was quoted in a few articles, and I know this because it was on WAMC this morning as I was on my way to work. Her guidance was a little bit different than what the county was saying, and was really advising people to still wear masks. So I wish I could have researched and found a clear answer for all of you in this, and all your great questions. Hopefully I answered the questions well, but when looking at the library community and looking at the local community, it is very mixed, the response. And I'll open the floor up to comments. I know that some trustees have some insights and information that they've gotten over the last 12 hours that they can talk to the board about, inform the board with.
So in order to have an orderly discussion, I'm not timing it or anything like that, no worries. But I do have a chart that I think our secretary put in maybe order of seniority, something like this. I don't know. But it should, yeah, it has everyone in it. So would everybody be okay if by one trustees to speak. And I'll look here and see if anybody's nodding or freaking out. Okay, we got a lot of nods. So the way it's organized is, I don't think it's seniority. I don't know what it is, but it starts with Jenna. Would you like to put in some input?
Yeah, I feel very strongly that we should keep our mask mandate. One of my key reasons for that is that the percentage of vaccinated people is, I think, less than half right now in the city. And so more people would need to wear a mask than not coming in based on those numbers, because the mask removal is only for people who have been vaccinated. As someone who's worked at a frontline library desk, it would put our staff in an extremely uncomfortable position, I think, to be talking to people about their vaccination status, figuring things out, dealing with the honor system. I also have the perspective of someone in the community who is extremely vulnerable right now to health issues. And if we were to lift the mask mandate at the library, it would make the libraries inaccessible to me. And I don't think that's what we want our brand to be as a library. It's not hard to wear a mask in this space. I just think it would be a really bad idea to drop it when our percentage of vaccinated folks is not high.
Thank you, Vice President Butera. And I've just received word from the Secretary that it starts with executive committee, but I put myself at the bottom because I'm just weird. So the next person is our VP for Finance who would go, and that's Sarah Shearer.
Thanks, Matthew. So I guess two things. First, just adding to the conversation about items that we've tried learning throughout the day. I actually asked around at the New York State Capitol today what our policy is going to be starting tomorrow, and none of us have received word. We haven't received an email, we haven't received a memo, so we haven't received any information as to what the policy in the New York State Capitol is come tomorrow morning. So unfortunately, no information there. And then in regard to this question as a whole, I certainly hear the concerns and the reasons and the support of staff for continuing the mask mandate, or the requirement to wear masks in the library. I guess my only question is thinking long term, and maybe that's not something we want to do right now. Maybe we want to look at this as a short term decision. But I just worry if we continue the mask requirement now, what happens if the vaccine rate doesn't rise, or if it rises this year, but it drops next year? I actually pulled statistics for the rate of flu vaccinations annually in the US. And that rate is about, and on average, 45% of people a year in the US get their flu vaccine. And I believe the vaccination rates for the COVID vaccine in New York State right now, I know it's about 50% of people have received at least their first dose, and slightly lower than that, maybe in the low 40s have completed their COVID vaccine currently in New York State. So I see those numbers and I just get concerned, what percentage are we going to reach with the vaccine? So again, if this is a temporary policy, just thinking down the line in the future, how do we revisit it? And, worst case scenario, what do we do if nothing changes? So I guess that's my question. And those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next person on our list is Secretary Strong.
Thank you. So I do have, just to add to what Scott said about the city guidance, is the city's reviewing the guidelines and figuring out what to do. And then in the meantime, expecting people to still wear masks in public spaces. So that's, which I think I've seen in other places as well. I think that's actually similar to the New York State, the Cultural Education Center guidance. That seemed familiar. So some of the concerns that I saw from other trustees about what to do is what we're required to do, what we're legally allowed to do. So I'm glad that Bob is here and has weighed in to some extent. It sounds to me like we can decide, at least in the short term, what's the right thing for the library. So I think we should keep the mask mandate for now. I mean, the fact that Sarah Shearer, that the Capitol doesn't have any guidance yet, the whole rollout has been so quick. It doesn't give people time to adapt. We've been so deliberate this whole time to say, we want to make sure people are comfortable. It's all so awkward. It's so just difficult. So giving staff time to adjust, giving time to figure out how to handle different situations, I think would be important. And one thing I find really frustrating, I've already said in my email that we serve a lot of children. And well, children under 12 would have to be masked. Well, children 12 to 15 were eligible last Thursday. So none of them are fully vaccinated. My kids got vaccinated the very first day, which means they won't be fully vaccinated until June 17th. So the soonest kids under 16 can be vaccinated is June 17th. So it baffles me that we're saying, you know, these kids are fine, because they're not vaccinated yet. They're not protected yet. So to me, those are the two reasons to not rush this, because we need to know, we can't even figure out what the guidance is elsewhere. We want to protect our staff and our patrons. I'm curious if we could, well, maybe I don't even want to say that. I think short term, we just keep it, and then there's some things to consider for the next meeting, because I agree with Sarah Shearer, we have to figure out how to, you know, get rid of the mask mandate ultimately, or figure out what the threshold is. But for now, I think we don't just switch the switch tomorrow. We need to be really thoughtful about it.
Thank you so much, Karen. A great input on everybody's part so far. And the next person up would be our resident healthcare expert, Dr. Brenda Robinson, who is part of the board and as the doctor. So there you go.
Hello, everyone. This is certainly a tough time. As I mentioned in the email prior, the CDC guidelines certainly gives local businesses the option to create some of their own guidance or policy in regards to this mask mandate. And I do agree with Jenna's comments in regards to continuing the mask mandate. I think it's very important for all the reasons that she had mentioned as well. Safety certainly is very important. And I do believe at this particular time, people are still grasping with the ideal of removing a mask and what does that actually mean. And I don't think that's something that we should do in haste, as Karen had also spoke to as well. I do think that we have to have a clear position for the staff, because we want to make sure that they feel comfortable in their position, as well as the patrons that use the library. I certainly wouldn't want some folks to stop using the library because of feeling unsafe or having unclear direction or unclear expectations of what they would expect at the library. Going forward, I do think as well that we would have to look at what point would we actually remove masks, and at what standards would we set, what criteria would we need to see to say, hey, we no longer need these masks. And as we know by now, the vaccination rates for those fully vaccinated are below 50%. So I do believe that we should be very cautious. There's no reason for us to be move in haste when we can just take our time, just take a good look at what the situation is, what the impact would be, and really look at what point will we be moving forward without these masks? What criteria will we have in place to say, hey, no longer necessary at this particular time? So those are my comments at this time.
Thank you so much. And we'll go on to give every trustee a chance to speak. Ms. Arlene Way is up next, if you'd like to share your thoughts.
Okay. I'm going to take the position of safety first for everyone. I think that the decision to allow people to take the masks off was kind of speedy. I think there's more information to be gathered. I think at this point, I strongly recommend that we maintain our mask mandate until we, have some clearer idea in terms of how things are trending in terms of the vaccination rate. And so that is where I stand. I think we should just wait and be prudent.
Thank you so much. My screens are flying around here, sorry. Trustee Sarah Dallas, would you like to share your thoughts on it?
Oh, I always love to share thoughts. I agree with my colleagues who have said safety comes first. I want to share that the libraries in my system, and we're a little north, and our libraries are doing everything from requiring masks for staff and the public. Some are, the Clifton Park Half Moon Library is going with no masks following the CDC guidelines. The Saratoga Springs Library has done something a little different. Staff are required to wear masks in the building, but the public, they're going to believe in the honor system. So these are the bigger libraries, and other libraries are waiting to hear what their county health departments are saying, and others are following their county or their municipal, because many of our libraries are municipal public libraries. Having said that, I'm going to say that I am concerned if somebody comes in, and I leave it to Scott and his excellent staff, but having frontline staff have the tools they need to address people who might come in demanding not wearing a mask. I think that's an area that there needs to be some communication and publicity so people know what to expect. So I'm worried about the pushback some of the library staff will be facing. I think I've gotten some of my legal questions answered with that. Even though we are publicly funded and taxpayers have a right to use our building, as I understand it, trustees can make their own policy, whether to adhere to mask or following the CDC guidelines. The other thing that I was concerned about, I'm not sure what it is anymore. A lot of what I was feeling has already been addressed. Just an FYI, all of the public library systems are part of something called Palizdo. And on Friday, they're having a free webinar, an hour and a half, that is hopefully giving guidance to libraries to follow a path that makes sense and keeps people safe. I can send the link to everyone. Everyone is invited to be part of it. Afterward, if you register for it, all of the webinar and the documentation will be available as well. So I think I'm leaning towards, let's keep our policy in place continue to gather information, and then make the safest choice for our staff, our volunteers, and our community. I told you I had thoughts.
Thank you. So glad to hear them. And thanks again. Really good stuff. And our next trustee up is Tom McCarthy.
Hi, thank you. So I think everyone has said really good and thoughtful things. I am pretty comfortable keeping the mask mandate for now. I think that this is a really fast moving period of the pandemic. And so I think my inclination is to keep our decisions short term and maybe renew them at every board meeting, and just so we keep on top of it and so that we always are doing the most current thing. Yeah, I also just want to do what is easiest and safest and most, for best for the staff. So, I'm inclined to listen to their guidance because they're in the library every day. And the other concern I have that hasn't been said yet is that I think going forward, I really want to try to keep our policies in line with what other establishments are doing, like other public establishments where you can't necessarily check vaccination status very easily. Because if we're out of step with the rest of our community, that's when I think patrons will start to react poorly to whatever decision we make. So if it feels like, restaurants and city hall and public spaces are doing the masks to some extent, then I think we should also follow along. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Tom. And we have Trustee Brigitte Pryor, who I'd love to hear weigh in on.
Thank you. I am in agreement with everyone else as far as keeping the mandate with masks. My thoughts are that, commenting on what Trustee Sarah Dallas said, is that, we don't want the staff to be in harm's way or have to, have any confrontational interaction with patrons who may not want to follow the mask guide. But I think that with urging, we can encourage them, because now we're going into another phase where the libraries will be increasing their hours as well, starting June 1st. Or, we're going into the soft phase of Washington Avenue reopening on the 24th. So I think that it's important that we don't go backwards. So if we get the word out in a way to encourage patrons to help us keep the libraries open in order to, extend or increase the hours, we have to do that slowly by keeping the mandate for the mask for the time being, not moving too fast. As Trustee Karen said, that, we've been deliberate in every step we made so far with the COSP and the POP has been very detailed. So I think that because, someone somewhere else decided that it's time to take off masks, I think that's, a little unrealistic at this time. And everything is changing all the time. So I think that, I'll be comfortable, keeping the staff safe. And it's me as a patron coming into the library wearing a mask. Thank you
so much for that. And I'll just share a little bit of what I wanted to say because it comes from the governor's guidance. And I'm looking at the governor's site right now. And the governor's site said, the Department of Health strongly recommends masks in indoor settings where vaccination status of individuals is unknown. Mask requirements by businesses must adhere to blah, 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 blah. So it doesn't, it's really talking more about businesses, but it's also saying if your organization doesn't have a way to figure out who's actually vaccinated, who isn't, and I believe we don't, or it would be incredibly burdensome for the staff to do, then of course we can keep our mask mandate. And I would echo everyone else in terms of safety, making sure we're not doing it too quickly. We're right between 2 board meetings. So in a couple of weeks, we can revise if we need to. So I am definitely on the side of sticking with what we've got for now. And a couple of things have come up in the chat. So Secretary Strong mentioned, can I say this, Secretary, about the rates?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
So Secretary Strong mentioned that the vaccination rates as of yesterday in Albany County are 58.5% first dose, right? And 50.6 have been fully vaccinated, although that's not the city. And let's see.
Yeah, that's county, not city.
Yes, I guess it's the
Brenda, do you know the
closest
city rates?
Not offhand, I don't.
So it's an indicator, you know, that was shared here among board members. But yeah, it's not perfect. It isn't the city of Albany. And let's see, Vice President Tara asks about using the Excelsior Pass. I got mine. I think it's really cool, but I haven't had a chance to use it yet. But also, Vice President Sarah mentioned, you know, there's a digital divide of having this type of pass that requires a smartphone and data and everything else. So, yeah, I think it's too early to do it myself or to require anybody to show anything. Vice President Sarah Shearer mentions there is the little white card, which I think is kind of cute. It's old school. People could show their white card. But I think having to have everybody check right now, we're not ready for it. Maybe that's something we can talk about actually implementing for our next board meeting, in my opinion. So that's where I fall. Just keeping where we are for now.
Matthew, are we going to talk?
Yes.
Are we going to talk through the other memo, the options going forward memo?
I think we should. I just wanted to make
Can
sure.
I make a
had
suggestion
chance to
before?
Secretary Strong, I need your organizational skills.
So what I'm wondering, I mean, it sounds like I didn't hear anybody in full support of changing the mask mandate for tomorrow. I don't hear anybody. I think everybody said, let's keep it in place for now. So I'm wondering how far, like what we actually need to do today.
Yeah, do we need to vote on that?
It's 8:30.
Right, do we need to vote on that?
Yes, I agree, Brenda. That was my next question for Bob. I believe we have the policy that we want already in place, but do we want to put a vote forward? Is it something we should do?
I don't think we need to, if we're keeping our policy as is, we wouldn't need to vote to maintain our policy, right? We just.
That's what I'm thinking, but is it make vote on keeping it? I don't know.
I feel badly to say this, guys, but I don't have your COSP or your POP in front of me right now. So I would just defer to Scott. If there's nothing in those documents that would give anyone a reason to believe they could have a mask off in the library right now, then I agree with Jenna's assessment. If there's any question that we want to be clear that we, you know, are making a decision not to loosen the restriction, it might be worthwhile just having a vote. I don't think you can hurt yourselves by, you know, ratifying that concept if that's everybody's agreement.
Yeah, I think we should vote.
Yeah, I also think we should vote. I mean, that was kind of the point of calling this meeting, is to just set a clear line for at least the next period, so that staff and patrons can say this is what we're doing.
I would also, this is something that we have to probably take up at policy and governance, but I would love for our staff to have a quick and easy policy they can pull up if they do run into adversity at the door to say, this is our policy, this isn't me, so that they have backup. I don't know.
Jenna,
Yeah.
Jenna, we're going to work on that tomorrow. We're going to work on a handout so that when they do get a member of the public who's really giving them a hard time, it'll have my contact information. It'll also tell them this will be reviewed at the next board meeting. Here is how you can provide a public comment. And that'll be either through email, and because of the digital divide, we'll also give them Becky's voicemail, because I've had a couple conversations with members of the public and their concerns about not being able to do public comment because they don't have an email or can't access email. So Becky will be the public, her phone number will be the public comment hotline. Sorry to drop that on.
No, I should have assumed you were already on this, but I just wanted to put it out there because that's really helpful when you're facing someone who's angry.
Our plan is tomorrow is to redo the signs for the front of the building, provide handouts to patrons who are angry about it, and even patrons who are happy about it, just to say, hey, let the board know that you support this. We'll do a press release, and we'll make it so that board comments now can be done through email and voicemail.
And I just had just a quick question with all that, with the handouts. Will you provide masks at the door for those who decide that they don't, they came without one, thinking that they listen to CDC and they didn't know? Will you have a mask for them?
So we've had that set up. I will check the mask supply tomorrow, but we should still. My concern isn't not having the masks, because that was always in the plan. My concern is having enough, because we're probably going to see a higher usage. So that's it. Brigitte, thank you for that question. I will make sure tomorrow we have enough.
The other thing I was concerned about.
Okay, so
sorry. Just print that flyer as a big poster and be like, there it is. Just kidding. Sorry, Karen.
Well, messaging is really important. And I think some of the earlier messaging since Thursday has been like, nope, just not allowed. You have to do this. I think it needs to be more couched in the keeping everybody safe, consistent, all that stuff. Yeah.
We've paused that messaging over the last few days, and Stephanie and I had a really good conversation about it. So yes, you'll see more nuanced messaging going forward about safety and protecting patrons and staff.
And the concern that Sarah Dallas raised about frontline staff is the reason I asked the question about CECs, because I think community engagement clerks are going to be the people primarily enforcing this. That'd be kind of appropriate, because they're used to doing that kind of thing, right? But we don't have them everywhere.
Yes, and my main
I also think continuing the mask mandate gives us time to iron out a lot of issues and a lot of, I think, barriers that staff may encounter, so that we can have a strong process to support the staff, as opposed to rushing just to throw something together. So this gives us time to really coordinate and get something together that strongly supports the staff, and something that's very well done and not rushed.
Agreed.
And actually, I just want to repeat one of the comments I made in our earlier email discussion, because I hear a lot of conversation regarding keeping everyone safe, which is, of course, a good thing. I was just wondering if we can go a little more nuanced or in depth with the messaging, because, again, I don't want the public thinking that if you are vaccinated, that it's not effective and that, you're not safe. And you still have to wear a mask when you're vaccinated. So if the messaging could say something like keeping children and those who are immunocompromised or not yet vaccinated safe. Again, I just don't want the public starting to think that the vaccines aren't effective and that we're keeping everyone safe by this. So if there's any, I'm sure it's not easy to fit all of those words in a catchy message, but I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
We could use the term welcoming instead of safe too. You know, we want to be welcoming to folks who are unable to be vaccinated yet.
Yeah. Again, I don't. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, again, I just don't want people starting to think that the vaccine is ineffective. That was all.
And me personally, I don't want to avoid using the word safe because that's very important as well. And I do agree with you, Sarah, as far as not giving folks the impression that the vaccine is not effective.
I think we can use both safe and welcoming as our message. And that can be catchy enough and can be something that's, solid enough. So welcoming is, people will not be comfortable going into the space because they see people unmasked and they're not sure if they're vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So I think welcoming and safe, pairing those words together is probably the best way to communicate this.
And then just following up and echoing again what Karen and Brigitte said, how we've been so deliberate about the plan all along. So just conveying to the public that, this is our current plan and, things we will continue to stay on top of this and reassess regularly as more information and more data becomes updated. So I don't want people to see this policy and think this is it forever, but this is a current and ongoing situation that we're staying on top of. I'm hoping that could possibly mitigate any feelings, of patrons who are not happy with this decision, just to understand that we are closely monitoring this and it's evolving.
And I think the trustees and the board have set a good example of every month we've reviewed all of the work that we've done. And we have changed the plan almost every month. And we've communicated that to the public. Our problem is not always getting to people who are on the other side of the digital divide and trying to figure out how to communicate that clearly. The good news is our locations being open means that there are more and more people able to access their email, able to use our Wi-Fi. So, but we still need to couple that and give them options and abilities and flyers on the door, which is something that we have been using. We need to continue to use and update.
So Matt, are we gonna vote and can we put a motion on the table to continue the mask mandate?
Yes, Jenna, the VP, has come up with some simple wording that's elegant and works well for me. We would bring a motion to the floor to maintain our mask requirements in all branch libraries at this time, to be reviewed at the next board meeting, June 8th, I guess.
Yes.
So we would add that part about to be reviewed. So Rebecca, if you're grabbing that. Karen comes up with the APL board affirms the mask mandate outlined in the pandemic operations plan. We are reviewing new guidance from the federal, state, and local health authorities, and will review at each board meeting or until further notice. So what?
Jenna, I like Jenna's motion.
I like Jenna's.
Yeah,
sorry,
Jenna's
Karen.
motion. Let's go with Jenna.
I think just a simple,
Something
simple. We are moving to maintain our mask requirements in all library branches at this time, and we'll review at each board meeting. How's that?
Yes.
Each full board meeting.
Yeah, maybe the second sentence for my motion, just because I don't think until further notice or forever is the right messaging. Just the second sentence.
Sure.
Right, this one.
I'm down with that.
Okay. I put at this time, not until further notice. On Jenna.
Yeah, until further notice means forever.
No, but I said at this time is not.
Yeah, Jenna's was perfect. She said at this time. I don't understand why that's not acceptable.
Thanks for having my back, Dr. Robinson.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so Rebecca proposes motion to maintain our mask requirements in all library branches at this time, and we'll review at each board meeting. So I feel like now.
Yes.
So moved.
Yes.
Is that it? Okay.
Yes.
And Karen, did you want your
I
second
would
sentence in there?
second it if we
Not
need a
gonna-
second.
Yes. Oh. Yes.
Karen would
Sure.
like her second
Oh,
in there.
No, don't worry about it. We're good.
Okay, so it's being voted on. Thank
is it
you
being
all.
voted
You're
on in
so
board
proactive.
docs? It didn't pop up for me.
So
I
I think
didn't
that's
vote. I
yet
vote
to happen.
yes.
So
Can we just
wait,
do
wait,
it
wait, wait.
verbally?
Somebody said second. Somebody
I
said
second.
move, which was Sarah. That was Dr. Robinson. Sarah, who seconded?
Okay.
Sarah.
Put Dr. Robinson as first and seconded by Jenna. The only
Great.
vote I need a verbal confirmation vote for right now is Arlene, Matthew. I got Sarah.
I
You
vote,
didn't get mine. It's yes.
Okay, it's yes.
I'm yes.
Arlene,
Matthew is yes. That kind of flew right out there. Thanks, guys. You're very proactive. Great, and the motion carries. I have my screen pulled to see everybody's face. Here we go. Motion carries unanimously by all trustees. Thank you, everybody.
May I make a
Yes.
motion?
Okay, so we have
Well,
a trustee who wants to make a motion, and we have an executive director who wants to say something.
Scott,
What were you going to add there,
Scott
Scott?
trumps me.
No, just I need to, Matthew, if you can stay on after, so because we're going to need a quote for the press release. That's
Sure.
the only reason why I'm asking you to
Absolutely.
hang out in the
Yes.
parking lot with me after the meeting.
And we have to do some little formalities, like, for example, asking for a second public comment. Should we do that now, or Trustee Dallas, did you want to say something else?
yes, Sarah had a motion.
We have in our agenda, 5 is public comment number 2.
And we're there, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so public comment number 2, Rebecca Delgado.
We have not received any further public comment.
Thank you so much. So now we would need a motion from the floor to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Moved by
I
Dallas,
second.
seconded by a couple of different people. Brigitte Pryor, we'll say. And any comments, questions before we go to vote? I'm gonna say we probably don't have any.
Just to thank you to everyone for the thoughtful discussion. It was,
Yes,
it was really
many thanks all.
Arlene, please state your vote.
And the motion to adjourn
Yes.
about to carry. Okay. The motion to adjourn carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
I
night.
Good night. Thanks so much.